I'm calling Savior, Savior, hear my humble cry. Welcome to another piano lesson with Warren. My name is Warren McPherson if you're new to the channel. This is the channel where we talk about gospel music, gospel piano, and everything relating to how you can better improve your gospel piano playing by ear. We don't teach anything by notes. We figure it out by ear, and there's a structure into doing this. So if you want more content, more videos, more advice, tips, theory, ear training about how you can improve your gospel piano, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any new content. Today, we're going to talk about how to use the dominant seventh chord. 4 methods of using the dominant seventh chords as passing chords, especially for that traditional gospel sound. There are 4 fairly simple ways that you can execute these dominant 7 passing and really take your playing to the next level by just introducing these additional movements to your song. All right, so stay tuned. All right, welcome back, folks. Today we're going to be studying the key of G, right? G major. And we're going to specifically focus on the use of dominant 7th chords. Because a lot of people use the dominant 7 chords only when they go to the 5, right? If you're playing in a particular key, you go to the 4, and when they go to the 5, they would often make it a dominant 7, and then they go back to the 1. And that's basically the extent of how they use the dominant 7 chord. But there's so much more you can do with this, especially in traditional gospel, to really get that old school sound. Now, for those who are not too familiar about dominant 7 chord, let's take a quick breakdown as to what a dominant 7 chord is. So once you take a triad, a major chord, like say we take G, and then we're going to add the note a minor third on top of that, we get a dominant 7th chord. It's a form of 7th chords because we have different types of 7th chords. We have major 7ths, right? We have diminished 7ths. We have minor 7 flat 5s. All of these are different types of 7th chords, but today we're just going to focus on the dominant 7th, and that's an easy way to build it. You take a major chord, you add a minor third. And how you add a minor third, you count 3 half steps, right? So from here, 1, 2, 3, and you get a dominant 7th chord. Another simple way to think about a dominant 7th chord, if you take an octave, so a full triad, but you double the root, and you take this top note and you move that down by 2 half steps. 1 half step, 2 half step, you get to your dominant 7th. So that's basically what a dominant 7th chord is. Now, the 4 methods I'm going to teach you today of how you use these dominant 7th chords, it's all about how the chord is resolved, because they're all dominant 7th chord, but the resolution is different in each of these cases. Right? So first, let's take a look at the secondary dominant passing. Now, a secondary dominant is a dominant 7th chord that is not the 5 chord. So if I'm in the key of G again, my 1, my 4, my 5. Now, when I go to my 5 chord, I can make that into a dominant 7th, and this is called a diatonic dominant 7th chord because we're not using any key or any note outside of the scale. See? This is a D7 chord, and it has all the notes belonging to the key of G major. So that's a diatonic dominant 7th chord. A secondary dominant now is a non-diatonic chord. Now, The key about the secondary dominant is how it's resolved. A secondary dominant always resolved a fourth up. If it's not resolving a fourth up, then it's not a secondary dominant. It's most likely another one of the dominant 7 chords we're going to talk about. Now, oftentimes where you see the secondary dominant raise its head in gospel music is when we're going from a 2 to a 5. So in the key of G again, my 2 chord, my diatonic 2 chord is supposed to be a minor. But oftentimes in gospel music, we make this into a major and turn it into a dominant 7. So if we take an old song, like say, Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior. Pass me not, O gentle Savior. To the 5. Hear my humble cry. Now, what we often do before we get to that 5, we can put a secondary dominant that takes us to the 5. So it's resolving a fourth up, an interval of a fourth. So then it sounds like this. Pass me not, O gentle Savior. Hear my humble cry. So you see right there, I use that A7 as a passing to take me to my D7. This is called a secondary dominant passing. And it's a secondary dominant because of how it's resolved. Secondary dominant always resolved a fourth up, going from left to right, an interval of a perfect fourth. That's how you know you're functioning with a secondary dominant. Right? Pass me not, O gentle Savior. Here we go. Hear my humble cry. Right? Secondary dominant. That's the first one. Boom. Let's take a look at another one. I call this the chromatic dominant passing. And it's called the chromatic dominant passing because it resolves a chromatic. It resolves as a chromatic, moving chromatic in half steps. It could either be a descend chromatic, or an ascent. Most cases, the way I use it is an ascent. So we're moving in chromatics, in half steps. So if we take this again, pass me not, O gentle Savior, hear my humble cry. So you see that right there? Before I get to my secondary dominant, which is my A7, I proceed it with a chromatic dominant. So in this case, I go to, you can think of it as G sharp. That resolves to that A. That's a chromatic dominant passing. Right? So again, pass me not, O gentle Savior. Here. Beautiful. That's the chromatic dominant passing. We're going through them. Now that's one place you can use it. There are other spots, but that's a spot that I use it a lot, even in Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. We're going to the 6th now. That saved. Here we go again now. Oh, wretch. Woo! So that's it right there. From the 6th. Oh, wretch. And I just did the same exact passing. Now look at the voicing I'm using. So I'm going here. So I'm using the root, 5th, 7th, and I just put my 3rd up here. Nice voicing for that, keeping that 3rd at the top. Or sometimes I may hold out a note here, and then I'm just shifting stuff. So that's called the chromatic dominant passing. Boom, number 2. Let's take a look now at number 3. So the secondary dominant passing resolves a fourth up, a perfect fourth. The chromatic dominant passing resolves a half step up. Now we're going to take a look at the chromatic mediant passing. This one also resolves a half step up. But let's talk about the difference between the chromatic dominant and the chromatic mediant passing. That's also another dominant 7th chord. Let's go back to pass me not. Pass. Right there. Me not, oh gentle Savior. So I'm using my 3 as a chromatic mediant passing. Now let's back this up. What is a chromatic mediant? Now, it is stated that on the keyboard, every chord has a variety of chromatic mediants that's associated with that chord. I believe there are 6. So what makes a chord a chromatic mediant is that the roots of the chord need to be a third apart. It could be a major third or a minor third. So because my root chord is G in this case, any chord that's a major third or a minor third away from my G that also shares a common tone, that's called a chromatic mediant. So in the case where I use D, I mean my B major. B major is a third apart from G, and it also shares the note B. B you can find in both G major and E major and B major. So that's why B is the chromatic mediant of G. Other chromatic mediants would be like E flat or D sharp because they're a third apart. The chords are a third apart and they share a common tone, right? You can also think of E major. E major would be considered a chromatic mediant of G because the roots are a third apart and they share a common tone together. In this case, B. So, not going to go too far down chromatic mediants. I just want to highlight this specific one. And I'm using it as a sort of passing to get from G to C. Pass. Right? On that same note. Pass. That B. I'm harmonizing it with that B, B7. Pass. Then it resolves up a half step. Me not, oh gentle Savior. Here, right? Now, some things I often like to do when I play that B7 is to alter it. So we have a pass or pass, right? So we can play some form of altered dominant. This is called a chromatic mediant passing, and the chord that we're using is a dominant 7th. And of course, you can alter that dominant 7th chord. So that's dominant 7th chord number 3. Let's review the first 2. Chromatic mediant are actually secondary dominant, resolves a perfect 4th up. Chromatic dominant passing resolves a half step up or below, and oftentimes it's moving in chromatic fashions, right? Chromatic mediant is usually in relationship to the root of the chord, in this case G, and you can use it as a passing or often as a passing to get from 1 to 4. Let's look at the last dominant chord that we can use as a passing, and that's the infamous tritone substitution. You've probably heard about that one, but a tritone substitution is always a dominant chord. And obviously you can extend or alter that dominant 7th chord to be, like a sharp 9, sharp 5, flat 13th, and all of that. But that the core of the chord is a dominant 7th. Now, a tritone substitution often resolves a half step down. So in this case again, pass me not, O gentle Savior. Hear my humble cry. here we go. Do not pass me by. So you see, to take me from my 6 to my 2, from my 6 to my 2, I'm using a passing, which is this A sharp or B flat 7. In this case, I'm thinking I can use a B flat 13th, A flat, A sharp 13th, or a flat 13th. But the reason why it's a tritone substitution is because it is acting in place of the E minor. So going from the E minor to the A7, I'm using this A sharp as my route to get there. So look at the distance between the E and that A sharp. It's an interval of a tritone, right? Tritone substitution also often is being substituted from a dominant. So in this case, while on others thou art calling, do. So I could have also played an E7 to take me to A. But if I substitute that E7 with its tritone, that's where we're getting that A sharp chord from. And again, like I said, you can alter it. 13 flat 9th, flat 13 flat 9th. You can do all kind of crazy stuff with it. And that results in the A7. So the difference between all of these different dominant 7th chords is how they resolve. That's the most important thing that tells you what's happening with the chord. So again, to review, secondary dominant passing resolves a 4th up. The chromatic dominant passing resolves a half step up. And the chords move in chromatic fashion, half steps. The chromatic mediant passing resolves a half step up, but it's also functioning as a sort of a reharmed version of the tonic, of the root, right? And then lastly, we have the tritone substitution, which resolves a half step down, and it's often reharmonizing or substituting a dominant 7th chord. And that can be used anywhere. Because remember, if we take it from the top again, pass me not. So even if I don't play that chromatic mediant, this G7 can also be substituted with its tritone, right? Which would be C sharp. I could probably get this out there and play that. So then I can go, pass me not, O gentle Savior. Oftentimes you can even combine them. I could play, pass me not, right? Chromatic mediant, tritone sub, resolve to my C. Whew. So that's the 4 ways you can use a dominant 7th chord passing. And if I were to use all 4 in this little hymn right here, check it out what you'd get. Pass me not, O gentle Savior. Hear my humble cry. While on others thou art calling, do not pass me by. Savior, Savior, hear my humble cry. While on others thou art calling. Catch this. So right there, going from the 6, I do a sort of chromatic descent to the And then from here, diminished passing. We'll talk about that in another lesson. I'm calling Savior, Savior, hear my humble cry. So lots of possibilities you can do with these dominant 7 passing, and then obviously there's some other stuff that I was doing there, diminished passing and little blues licks and line. So hopefully this was enlightening, helpful, and educational and entertaining for you. Lots of stuff here that you can drill super deep in. And hey, if you want to take this stuff even further, if you want to see countless examples on various songs in various keys of how I'm doing these different movements and passing chords, pianolessonwithwarren.com is the place you want to check out, right? We run a membership over there for gospel musicians, specifically and exclusively about gospel music. We don't teach anything else, and we teach all of that by ear, especially the theory behind why these things work, so you can sort of start to memorize this stuff. And right now we have a special running, a 7-day trial. You can check out all of our courses for 7 days, and all it costs you is $1, right? So I have a course called The Secret to Passing Chords and another one called Gospel Passing Chords in C, where I cover more of these types of passing chords. In fact, I cover 7 of them. And then I show you them on multiple song examples that comes with cheat sheets, lead sheets, MIDI files, and all of that stuff. Plus we have, at this point, dozens of gospel song breakdowns where I show you how you can reharmonize them, hymns, Christmas songs, all of that stuff for beginner, for intermediate, and obviously for the guys who want to jump even further down the rabbit hole. Because one song and one tutorial isn't nearly enough to be able to understand this where you can do it seamlessly on multiple songs, right? Gonna need to take it a little bit further. And so this is some of the stuff you get over at pianolessonwithwarren.com when you signed up for our 7-day trial. So if that's something you're interested in and you'd like more information, there's a link below in the description. Click on that and check it out. Take advantage of this trial. 7 days, you have unfettered access to hundreds and hundreds of video tutorials laid out in a practical way, so you can begin to see how this gospel thing works, right? And especially to learn all of that by ear. So again, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this video. And lastly, go practice. Practice, practice, practice. Start to implement some of the stuff that was discussed in this lesson today, all right? Until then, keep listening, keep singing, and keep practicing, because that's how you'll continue to grow as a musician. Bye for now, and have a blessed week.